What we've got here is failure to communicate.
From sunny Southern California, we bring you Meet Bridget, a podcast for building confident communication and female badassery. We spotlight women who have bridged the gaps in their lives by building strong relationships and speaking their teenage dreams into reality.
You need to be 100 times more professional in order to be taken seriously in this life, because you're not going to get paid in time. You're not people are going to push you a little bit more than they would push a man. I'm sorry to say that, but it's still true.
Welcome back. Hey there. Welcome back to Meet Bridget. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Kashia Rosenberg, and together with my best friend and co-host and the CEO and founder of Bridget, I help run a confident communication platform for teen girls. Welcome back. We are so excited. We have an amazing guest today. Sasha and I have the mega talented Bettina Bogar, Hungarian-born photographer, creative producer, and gifted storyteller on the Inspired by her mother's film cameras, Bettina fell in love with photography at the time. Born in Hungary, she relocated to Canada and is now living in Southern California, pursuing her passion for learning all she can about the world and reflecting its beauty back to its people. Along her journey, she learned that great commercial photography is all about providing
As a commercial
striking
photographer,
images that share
a background in
brand's
art
essence.
direction and high creative production, Bettina does it all. Shoots, produces, art directs content for clients in the advertising, beauty, fitness, lifestyle, and travel industries. She's known for this West Coast aesthetic that you'll see immediately if you search her anywhere. And she has this unique way of working and combining that with crisp, bold photography style in the world is getting to know people and telling their stories through her art. Excited to have her here today. You'll also recognize her clientele include notable greats such as OPI, Balance, Airbnb, Lululemon, Bravado, American Express, Chevrolet. I mean, I could keep going, but the list is really exhaustive. So we'll cut it at that. I met Bettina through shooting for Bravado, which is an amazing women's mostly nursing bra company, but they make bras for all sorts of different are a wonderful women's brand. And I shot with them first. I mean, it was weeks after my baby girl Eden was born. So I had a wonderful experience working with Bettina, and we kept in touch. We did a creative shoot together on the beach, and I was just by her talent, but also her professionalism and her relatability as a person and just a human in this world. So welcome, Bettina, to the pod.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Oh, we're stoked. I mean, we're excited
happy to be here.
I mean, as your bio suggests, there's so many different elements to your story. So we're excited to take it back to the beginning and just kind of see how you've gotten to where you are today.
100%. I always, it's like, when someone reads my bio to me, I'm like, who did that? Did I do that? I didn't do all of that. It's just immediate imposter syndrome. Just like, no, that's not true. That's not possible. That many friends. And then yeah, it's right. It's been 10 years since I've started out as a photographer. So it's been a long journey.
That's got to be so cool. I mean, Asha and I have talked a little bit about imposter syndrome casts before. I think that's sort of something that a lot of young women and now can completely relate to. We will get to that. One of the things that we love to do is we love to start out talking about your formative years, where you came from, what life was like growing up as young Bettina, where your inspiration started, things. Dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your beginnings, childhood, teen years. Let's get started.
Sounds good. So I was born in a small town, about 2 hours from the capital, Budapest. I mean, the whole country, you could cross it like north to south in like 3 hours. It's not a big country. We have 10 million people altogether, but that kind of just gives you a perspective of how small of a community I'm from. And yeah, my mom and dad, they divorced early on. So I would say I was around 2 or 3. And my mom was a single mom raising me by herself. So I definitely think that had a big impact on me when it comes to female role models and just looking up to someone that's powerful and and does it all. And she was an
Wow.
entrepreneur at the age of 19. And at the same year I was born. So that's already just something that I can't even imagine. Like thinking about having a nap, just like how do
Well, and to
women
be
do
starting a
it?
business
How do you
when
guys do it?
in that
It's
stage, I
just
mean, that's a lot.
exactly. Exactly. It's a lot. She had some family support, but most of all, I think she just always had the tenacity and do something unique and special and do things her own way. And that's exactly what she did. And I kind of grew up in that environment of hustle. And I was in the back of the hair salon that she had for herself, and she was washing hairs at the front, and she's like, okay, she's fine, she's in a crib, and then just go back to work. Like, it's crazy to think of that. Like, this wouldn't fly in too, but back then it was. And then eventually my mom stopped pursuing her career. I think I was around 6 or 7 when she just shifted and just took a full-time job and started school. I was a really, really good student, very smart. Therefore, I was bullied a lot because that's what people or kids my age are picked on, I guess. It's just like I've never felt like I belonged in the first 8 years of years for me. It's just I didn't feel like that was my community, my kind of people. Um, and I remember my sister. So my mom started dating another guy when I was around 10, and she got pregnant, and my sister was born when I was 12. And that was like one of my first big love affairs. Just meeting her and falling in love with her and her cute little personality. And we were very, very tight, sister and I. And I remember a few years later, just our bond was so strong that her dad kind of didn't feel like he belonged. And so there was something weird around that relationship between the four of us. Him and my mom decided to part ways. And my
Wow.
mom again of 2 daughters. And then by then I was around 14 and she had to go back to work. In Hungary, you actually get
Wow.
paid mat
3
leave for
years?
years.
I've never heard of
Oh my
anything
God,
like
that's
that.
amazing. I know. So first 2 years is like fully paid. And then the third year, I think it's like a little bit less, but you can still pursue it if you have, a partner and the two of you like provide income for the family. That's totally doable. So I think my sister was 2, 3, yeah. Around that time, she started kindergarten, and my mom had to go back to work. And so that was a big change for us because she worked in 3 shifts and she very heavily relied on me taking care of my sister. So in some ways, I've become a mom at the age of 14 or at 12, I guess. She relied on me heavily, but she was just like, listen, this is it. Like, my shift starts at 6 a.m. You need to take her to kindergarten on your way to school, or you need to pick her up on your way home from school and you have to feed her dinner and put her to bed, et cetera, et cetera. So every week it was a different schedule for me. But by then I shifted and moved down to high school, and I ended up being in a different community at the top of the best high school of my town. And I love my community. It was a little bit easier for me to take care of her and not be bullied anymore at this new environment with smarter people and kids around me. And it felt like that shift was at the perfect time.
Yeah, I mean,
almost,
that's such
with
a
the added
good
responsibility.
point to
Does that
be
make
like
sense?
reflecting on. You're like, this was an additional burden that I was taking on, like caring for my sister, but also like appreciating that you had these other things that were helping you feel more adjusted and, less stressed out in other areas of your life.
I mean, I certainly think it was a stressful, just going from like an average school to somewhere where the expectations are so much higher. because it is, everybody's just so smart, and you still want to be the smartest kid in your class. You're no longer it, because you look around and like, wow. But I finally felt like these were my people, and that's where my first really good friendships were born. Did a life, and still every time I go home and visit my childhood best friend, I go to her home and we still hang out and still keep in touch. And she still lives in Hungary, so it's just nice to see that that was so foundational for me.
Yeah. That's a ton of responsibility to have, especially at that age, let alone, watching your mom sort of accomplish all of this as a single parent twice over, with two young daughters. I can relate a little bit because I'm much older than my younger sibling. And then naturally, it's one half you want to do it, but then there's a responsibility sort of thrust on you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of outlets did you have, especially before you transitioned into your new school? Were there things that you picked up, or hobbies or habits that you like sort of had on the side where you could just kind of take a step away from your big sister responsibilities and the bullying at school that would kind of alleviate all of that?
Mm-hmm. I did a lot of in elementary school. I did a lot of dancing, like modern dance. I love that, but then as I've gotten into my teens and tweens, I got a performative art, and we would have these different events where we would perform, whether they're in town, and eventually we
Mhm.
just kind of
Yeah, it
got
was like
pushed
too
out of that
unique.
because of the
Yeah.
age. It was just almost embarrassing to like dance in front of, and you're like a teen and you're like have this growing body and you're awkward
Yeah.
already, and now you have to like dance in front of these boys that you like and then these girls that bully you. So I ended up leaving that around 12. um and yeah, I mean, photography was always something I was leaning towards. And Born, it's so funny, she was my first muse and model. And I was just at home actually 2 weeks ago, and we were looking at the photo albums, hers and mine. And I had about
Yeah.
100 photos from my childhood, and she had thousands, because I just like, I took rolls after rolls after rolls of her, and it was just like such a cute little experience. And I would dress her up in like different costumes, and we would do like full on photo shoots. And again, she's just a toddler at this point, but we had the most fun together. And funny enough, she also became a dancer as she grew up, so that little performer was in her as well, and she just loved all her photo shoots. And we had a lot of fun. But it's funny enough, I can't really remember doing anything else aside
Mhm.
from studying, taking care of my sister, and hanging out with my friends. I actually think that was it for me for a long time. So as I was growing older, I kind of missed out on my teens. I didn't have that crazy like posters and like, I don't like my mom and I hate my mom, and any of that phase. I didn't have it.
Yeah.
I was a good girl, and that kind of came out later on in my like 19, 20, 21. I just like partied like and I had to get a system. I feel like, I don't know if it happens to everyone, but for me, it just like had to happen. I had to go party every weekend, and kind of
I
ended
can
that
relate
phase,
to
and
that
I
too.
wrapped
I
it up
mean,
into
like,
yeah.
I mean, all my siblings, we were like really good kids. Then it was sort of later, like, I feel like a lot, I hear that story from a lot of very well behaved young, that it's like I mean, maybe you don't go crazy. Not everyone goes like full rebellion, but you have to have like a stage in your life to kind of just, and sometimes it comes earlier, sometimes it comes later. I'm so interested. I mean, I didn't know that you had a dance background, but thinking of your images and even like the way you direct when you're shooting, you have this wonderful way of capturing the form in like in movement, in motion, and you get that kind of like element of like
Hmm.
expression and freedom out of your images. So I'd love for our audience to honestly go Google Bettina's work. It's just beautiful. But I think that um, it's fun to hear that, because while at the time, like maybe you ultimately felt bullied for studying dance, see how that is something that ultimately has probably informed the way that you work now. Just having that study of the female form or male form in movement. So
100%. 100%. I think photography is a lot about body language, and we communicate a lot with our bodies and with our eyes, and I was always someone that just kind of like, I was rather a watcher and observer, and just I feel like I still to the day understand a lot more about how you're sitting and how your hands are versus what you're saying, and I always tend to watch that to understand someone's intentions before they even say anything. How to walk into a boardroom and how to carry that confidence with you because of that knowledge. I don't know if it's coming just from the dance background. I studied it a lot because I was just genuinely so interested in all of that, and we communicate again a lot with our bodies, and more than what you would think. Yeah.
It also sounds like you were very observant, even as a young child, because when you talk about your recollection of growing up, I know you said the only things that you feel like you can remember are, studying your sister, but you also were really keenly paying attention to your mother as a role model from a very young age. So, like, you were recognizing that she was doing things on her own and that it was just the two of you. Do you find, like, when you go back into that space and time, were you always so observant of your surroundings? Like, were you more of a quiet individual, or did you feel like you were mostly externally expressive, like in the way that you danced?
I think I was a very, very quiet kid. Um, I loved going to the library. Now I'm getting memories back. And I remember, yeah, I spent basically after school, I always went there, and I wanted to learn everything that had to be learned about psychology, even just like human development, female, like what's happening to my body. Cause like in my family, like my mom has a high school degree and that's about it. So there wasn't really a lot of
mhm.
educational or like educational background, I guess, or there isn't much that she could share other than what she already.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds
How
like
do I
you're kind of
rephrase this
saying
that it
that it wasn't
sounds a
like
little bit
the
better?
way that she educated you wasn't like formal from her experience, and it wasn't like this structure. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So when I like my mom was very street smart
Mm-hmm.
in a sense,
Mm.
but she was never really like a book smart person. And my questions were a little bit more in depth. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to know more and more. And eventually I realized that, oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
My parents don't actually know everything I want to know.
Yeah.
And where do I find the information before internet?
Yeah.
And that was in the library. And I went there a lot and I learned a lot. I read a lot. And then when I got my first PC and the internet came along,
Yeah.
the dial-up, that was just like the
I know.
information explosion. Just wow, holy moly.
Information at the tip of your fingertips.
Exactly.
As
After
long
like
as no
the
one
3
else
minutes it
is
takes to
trying or on the
3
phone.
minutes of you logging on the dial.
Oh man.
Yeah, as long as no one's sending a fax.
Exactly. Did you guys use
We had
MSN Messenger or
AOL,
like
like
ICQ or
AIM,
all of that?
Instant
Oh yeah.
messenger. And yeah, it was a
Yeah.
problem in our house. It's like, okay, like who's making a call? Who's on instant messenger? Who's doing siblings too? So it's just a mess.
Oh my God. I didn't even think about that as an issue because my siblings are all so much younger that, they're lucky.
Totally.
They're almost like in a different creation in terms of technology.
Mhm.
Like my brother, who's 6 years younger than me, by the time he
Yeah.
was going through middle school, it was like, oh, kids have cell phones.
Yes.
And
Like I got a
for
cell phone
me, I
in
was
high
like, my mom and I need
school,
to take home a
which like
walkie-talkie.
I was talking to
Like,
someone yesterday about when they were talking about their in school, and they're like, oh, I think it was like first grade. They're giving kids like iPad. Like, "Oh, what? Like, but I mean, it's amazing. It's just that's how technology
Oh
has
my
evolved.
gosh.
yeah. Talk about talk about the difference in learning how to read people's facial expressions and body language. I feel like that's something that's going to be more of a challenge for kids growing up today than it was for us because we are so dependent on interactive play. Whereas now, you know, it's so great because we can talk to you from miles and miles away in different cities. But, you know, it's a different world
Yeah.
than what we grew up
Totally.
in.
There's an emoji for everything, right?
Yeah.
You don't really
Yeah.
need to express how you feel. I'll just send you an
Yeah.
emoji. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I remember being on like when that started on MSN Messenger a lot. And I think that's where my first real friendships were born almost once because we go out at night, but we were chatting until like 10
Mhm.
o'clock and
Mhm.
forming these bonds with people that
Totally.
you may have not had the courage to go up to in school because
Yeah.
stranger danger, but
Yeah. Well,
like,
I
oh, you're
feel like
so
I've
much
never, but I
via
feel
the
like
internet.
in high
Yeah.
school, because I stayed at the same high school with a lot of the same kids that I had been known kindergarten. I felt like my persona in while we were at school was already like developed, you know. So I started having some friendships and stuff that were kind of my instant messenger friendships, and I was like, this is like a place where I can actually continue to like change on that, like where I feel kind of static, the person that I am in high school, you know? But it was sort of like this like different, you know, and I mean that's evolved into a
Totally.
completely different thing now with everyone having social media profiles and avatars and the meta space and everything, you know, it's just like it's to
Yeah.
another level now, but I remember kind of feeling like, okay, like if I feel stunted in certain areas of my personality in person, I'm like, these are conversations, I'm like talking about deep things that I never knew I could actually connect with another high schooler about. So,
Mhm.
100%.
mhm.
And I feel like we have so much pressure on young people nowadays to just be like, what's in your bio? You
Yeah.
have these 160
Yeah.
characters. Go. Who are you? And with us back in our
Yeah.
day, we were like, I don't know, am I an emo girl today or do I like hip hop? Or like, what do I like? Who am I? And you
Mhm.
get to change and,
Yeah.
as you said, like evolve and just like play around with different persons and see what was fitting. And there's no on the internet. Whereas
Oh,
just
yeah.
today,
Oh, that's such
everything's
a good
imprinted.
point. That's
Yeah,
such a good point, especially for someone like moving schools. I mean, you get to yourself every time, but I mean,
Yeah. I wonder
nowadays
even, like,
anything
because I
you
feel
put
like
out
that
there is
this
out
just brings up
there.
another thing, like, when
totally.
we would go off to college after high school, it was like, ugh, I remember thinking about college and, well, this is my chance to, like, start fresh, big city, new people, and I'm like, I'm just gonna blank slate it, you know? I'm like, I've been waiting, like, but I wonder if, like,
Mhm.
you know, young people really have that same freedom, yeah, level of, like, you know, if college
Opportunity.
provides that to young people anymore to the extent that it could when we didn't really, like, yes, we had, like, a little MySpace stuff, like, or whatever we did on the internet, but
Yeah.
it wasn't such like a I feel like, you know, I run into already, like, building brands, you know, and, it's powerful, you know, in a
Hmm.
sense, but it's also, I don't know, limiting.
I think it takes the magical awkwardness out of childhood.
I agree with you.
I could go back and tell my childhood
Yes.
self something and be like, just absorb these awkward years.
Right,
They're
and a lot
going
of
to
laughs.
really provide you like when you're
Good.
older. Yeah, yeah. So, I'm really, really interested, and you kind of touched on it, but I want to know about like the first time you ever what tell us about that time where like the spark happened and you're like, oh my God, there's magic in being able to capture these moments.
That. I don't recall the first time, but my mom had a lot of film cameras, and I remember spending all my allowance on just getting the film developed, and just being so excited. And that was like between the ages of 8 till 12, and the big revolution of digital happened, and um, and I was like raving a digital camera, but I never had like too expensive. And my best friend at a time, her dad bought this like Canon starting kit. It
Yeah.
was just so high end and like really, really cool. And I remember we were sitting at the front of her house and the sun was shining in beautifully. And she had this tiny Vespa that she like rode me around town with. And the two of us would just always like go from A to B or school to home with it. And I was like, why didn't you pose for me on your Vespa? Like, that sounds like a good idea. And I'll use your dad's camera to just like try it out. And funny enough, I was just home in Hungary and I brought home a stack of CDs with me. And the images that are on them. So I haven't seen these in like 15 years or more.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, holy moly, these are the first actual digital photos I've taken that were like an editorial at a time of my friend. And then I would just use like selective color and like have her lips be different color and then her body is black and white. I'm like, this is so terrible. But at the same time, wow, like I really started early on and I never really noticed these patterns until much later in life. Like I never really decided that I'm going to be a photographer until I was 21 or 20. Like it was like a big long stretch of developing this love for the art, for the craft. And I remember like as I was getting older and like more interested in guys, I was always falling for guys that had cameras or like were photographers or did something artsy or like music or like there was something always, and I didn't know why I was so attracted to them, but now looking back I'm like, of course, because they all did something that I wanted in my personality, that I was too scared to kind of take on or admit that okay to do that.
Can we dive into that some more? Like, so how did you so you went to this new high school, which was sort of a new outlet for you to be more yourself and not just the Bettina that was taking care of your sister and had a lot of adult responsibility. And it might be a little different too, so you'll have to explain. In Hungary, is it traditional to already be thinking about, college or university? Like, is it typical for you to, like here in the United States, I feel like especially now, there's a lot of pressure on young kids to know what the next step that they're going to take right after high school. Like, did you feel the same type of pressure? Did you have like a pathway set out? And was photography a part of that at the time?
For me, my pathway was definitely not set out, but tons of pressure on have good grades, study, you have to get into some kind of university. And again, university, if you have good grades, it's free in Europe. And I ended up getting into a university that I picked based on purely just the name of the course. And it had something in it. And I'm like, I'm going to go for it because I just had no idea what I wanted to do. And my mom was pushing me to just really go and have a job where you can wear a white shirt and go to an office and make great money. Don't have the life that I had. Like, you need to like up this family line and be smart. You're smarter. You need to do great things in life. So, and that's what I want for you. So I ended up choosing public administration as my BA degree, which was basically working for the Hungarian government. And I got in immediately. It was great, but it had nothing to do with art. It was economics, and that's about it. And at the end of the day, I could work for any town hall or anything like that in Hungary, or any ministry, governmental, bureaucratic institution. That would be me. And when I realized about a year into my university studies that this is not for me, but it was instilled in me that I can't quit. Might be so upset if I finished school. I started working halfway through and ended up picking up an office job. I was my mom's pride and joy. And I was working on actually writing EU tenders for different governments, like city governments or town halls, and allowing them to access funds to better their towns. So it was really cool. It was like an urbanistic development kind of tender writing, very niched in career that I started out when I was 20 or 19, 20. And it's like a very, very cool job. And then I'm being grabbed from there and headhunted for another position. Who knows where I would be right now, but something was not right. And I felt like I need to get out. And that's when I made the choice of, okay, if I am going to get out, I'm not just going to leave this job. I'm going to leave the country. And in the meantime, in my free time, dating a photographer, then I was dating another photographer. Then I was dating a DJ. And I remember this guy that I moved to Canada with, he was very pushing me to have hobbies, to like really like stop working all the time. Like, what do you really like to do? And he was the first when I was like, I really like to take pictures. I think that's what I want to do. And he was the one that really pushed me. He's like, listen, my best friend has this really cool camera. Like, he will loan it to you. Try it out. And I did. And I loved it. And then I went to my other friend who was also a photographer, and I begged him to teach me the basics of DSLR. And I remember, like, in a course of 1 hour, he taught me everything that you need to know about how to shoot in manual mode. And it was sticking like this. It was just like a quick, like, oh my God, that's so simple. I know how to work this. This is how light works. This is insane. It just like everything in my head just like started connecting. And after that, he said, listen, you look very, very intrigued by this process. So I'm going to be your assistant. Let's organize a couple of creative shoots and see what you got. And I had a lot of girlfriends at a time. So I asked every single one of them who wants to pose for me, I'll give you photos for free. Let's try this out. And we did a whole day. I think we had like 4, 5, 6 different women come in, and they all were posing for me. And just like, I think it was like at our old apartment. And my photographer friend at the end of the day, he just looked at me and he said, you're so creative. I've never been this creative in my entire life. Like, how did you do that? Like, how did you come up with all these different poses? How did you make these women feel so comfortable? And the photos look so good. And this is your first big girl camera and first time really doing this. And I had no idea. It was just coming so intuitively. So that was a big, big moment of success for me. And that's where I was like, maybe I could do this. But then I looked around, and I'm in Eastern Europe. This is a male-dominated industry. There's not much opportunity. So that's where I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to be in North America. And that's where my dad came in, because he lived in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
In Canada, and seen him at that point in 10 years. He left when I was 12. And I just said, listen, I think I want to come and see you, and I want to try a life out there. And he said, by all means.
Oh my gosh, what a leap.
Come out. Try it out. Yeah.
Did you have a relationship with him before this? Like, was he a big part of your life growing up, even though he lived in Canada? Or was this really just like, call him up one day and I'm headed over?
Actually, it's very crazy. I kind of missed that it's interesting. I was so focused on my mom, but I was a girl until, like, I think forever. But he left when I was 12 and moved to Canada. And when he announced that, it was just like one day, it's just like, I'm leaving. And it was a giant shock to my system. And he just said, I'm going to go for a year. And then from 1 year, it became 5 years. And from 5 years, it became like he never came home. So that was like, it's still a big trauma, I think, that I'm working through in therapy. But my dad was everything that my mom wasn't, and vice versa. My mom was steady, always there for me when I needed her, but not necessarily as emotionally available as my dad would be. My dad was the hugger, the lover. You got this. My mom was just like, study hard and keep your head low and just, be a hard worker. that was my mom. So it's like two different worlds, and one of them just all of a sudden disappeared, and he didn't really call
Wow.
much. He would call like once every 3 months.
Mhm.
So
That
that
had
kind
to
of
have been really hard.
that was really, really hard, and I carried this image of my dad in my head that like he was this fantastic person and he left me, and obviously um that's not the case. So when I
Right.
arrived in Canada and I actually met the guy, he wasn't the same person that I imagined he would be.
Mhm.
So having that kind of expectation and that crumbling was a big disappointment. For 3 in Canada, and I picked up a job. I started working on my own
Mhm.
and being on my own because it
How old
was
were you when you
just
moved
not
to
working.
Canada?
With my dad,
Okay. And what were your mom and
21,
dad
I was
doing
turning
for work at the
22 a
time?
few months after. My mom, I think my mom was still working in like a 3 shifts type of situation. And my dad,
Okay.
construction. Yeah.
It's so interesting because
But
so
oh, I totally told her. She was doing a stand up 2 years ago, last year here in West Hollywood, and I walked up to her and I'm like, I just want to say, I think you're a queen. And
Yes.
she looked at me and said, you're a queen. And we're just like, both fangirling each other. It's so talented.
I love it. I love it. Well, now you know you have something in common with her. You both got your starts at bar mitzvahs.
I mean,
So
yeah,
good.
that's hilarious.
So I love this transition from, being a teen girl in Hungary, figuring out that you have this part of you that's so deeply in love with creativity, and then sort of like just taking these leaps, like moving to Canada, like reaching out to your dad, moving into your own apartment, and then just taking these gigs. It's like, it feels like you sort of just kept putting one foot in front of the other, which is like one of like Asha's and I, like, it's one of our favorite themes ever because it's like that's how you get the big things done. You have to do it in small steps. So
100%.
what was like the first gig that you had where you were like, oh my God, this is huge.
Right.
This is significant. I'm like fully on my way to being a professional photographer.
Mm-hmm. Good question. I mean, just to go back to what you were saying, I think telling this story as is like, I just did this and did that.
Yeah.
In full transparency, this was all really, really hard.
Mhm.
And there were many, many breakdowns and cries. And the first couple of years, I actually couldn't get to see my mom because of the visa stuff. So I couldn't fly back home. And so it was almost like being together every day to going from there to like not seeing her for years, heartbreaking, which is, I think, what gave me even more drive
Right. Like
to
you almost
just
didn't
really
have
try
that
and
safety net
make
of like going back
this
to your mom and
happen.
being like, did I make the wrong decision?
No safety net. Yeah, there was no, and like my mom couldn't help financially. My dad couldn't help financially. It was just me. And they were like, hey, can you loan us
Yeah.
enough cash? So I'm like, okay, cool. Like literally no safety net. All the bar mitzvahs you can do. And so honestly, for that big first gig didn't come to me until 2016, I would say. I moved to Canada 2012.
Wow.
So it was, I picked up through photography. I also picked up this gig at 500 Pixels, which was it's
Okay.
a tech company that it's similar to Flickr. You can showcase your professional photography portfolio, and it was a big thing at a time. It's still pretty like a very famous platform. A lot of professional photographers use it to showcase their portfolio and potentially sell your photographs. And I got hired there by this amazing woman called Laura. She's seeing me that I didn't see at the time. And she looked at my portfolio and she's like, I think you're great. And I'm like, no, I'm here because I wanted your job, but like now you're hiring me for something way lower, but okay, whatever. And she's like, no, like this is what you need to do. You're going to become a content curator for a business, and she put me into this team of 7, and we're all photographers curating content for their stock collection. Every day I had to go through 12,000 images and pull out the 100, 200 top that were the best and sellable. And I feel like doing that for whatever many months I was doing that gig for,
Totally. And a commercial photo
really taught me what a
that's,
good
you
photo
know,
is.
it's one thing to
Like
have like an art photo, but something that
a
you're like,
good
there's money
commercial photo.
here.
So I was like
There's a
already
different eye.
exactly. Will this sell? And she's like, I think you have the style. You know what's good, but you know this intuitively. Let me teach you actually how to do this properly. And I love that job, and I love the community. And I find that it felt like I belong. This is my first time ever. I'm surrounded by all the creative artsy people from Russia, from like Czech Republic. Everybody was from somewhere else, Italy, and we're just all with these accents talking about photography. It was fantastic. And later on, a few years later, I think this was in 2014, 2 years later, I got a call back to the same company. They were looking for, again, help with curating, and they had a big project going on for Airbnb. At the time, they were producing neighborhood guides for Airbnb.com, which was basically photographers were all over the world capturing photographs of different neighborhoods of big metropolitan cities. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. And they brought me in to kind of trim down and help present these photos to the clients. And someone who was shooting the Los Angeles collection was just not delivering up to the standard. And I'll never forget, Laura called me into her office and she's like, so have you been to Chicago? I'm like, no. Well, do you have friends in Los Angeles? I'm like, yes. And she's like, okay, can you fly you to like shoot these, because whoever is there is not doing a good job, and I trust you and I know you can deliver. And I was like, what? Tomorrow? Yeah, I'll do it. Sure, whatever. So I had to cancel whatever bar mitzvahs I am planning on.
Right?
Oh no, a lot of Jewish moms be really upset with you.
Yeah. And I was 4 days. So yeah. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So I remember landing here, got into an like all expenses paid trip, paid for my hotel, and I got paid for my work. And I remember like first time in LA, first time in Santa Monica, just walking around. I'm like, wow, I'm here to work. This is so cool. Like, I love this.
Wow.
And then they ended up actually keeping me here for 4 weeks because the client really liked my work. And that was the first time ever where I felt like I'm working for a global brand. That is so cool. And the client loves the way I shoot, and I'm getting paid, and I'm like, I'm better than an LA photographer. Like that feels really good. So I think that was like I made it moment for me, because just like pinch me. And after that, I started landing a lot more commercial brands, Canada, but that's how it started. And that's where I fell in love with Los Angeles and here and the neighborhood. And that's where I live later on. But that's another story. But yeah,
I'm so
that
curious
was the moment for
because
me.
about your move and the boldness of you going and meeting your dad and just like really having no out, you know. But I also very close with your mom and your sister, and it was obviously difficult in so many ways to make that decision and leave them. Did you deal with any like what did your mom think of you much more into photography versus like a desk job? And was there a transition point to where she was like, okay, like Bettina's gonna be okay, like I'm proud of you? Like, did you feel that kind of tension and then approval later? Like what was that kind of a relationship going through time?
You've really tapped in there, because I still don't think my mom understands why I do photography. After this many years, we're just sitting at her kitchen table, again, 2 weeks ago, and she said, really get it. And I'm like, not a problem, Mom. I understand. And I understand that I cannot change you and I can't warp your views. You are who you are. And this is how you look at the world. And this is how I look at the world. And, I flew her out since, and she's been to both of my homes, and she's seen how I live and how I live. And my sister totally gets it. She's like, you're cool. But my mom just no, she won't get it. And that's completely fine. I don't look for her approval anymore. My dad always encouraged me, but my
Does
mom
your
is
sister
just,
still live in
she's who she
Hungary?
is. So yeah.
Okay. What does she do?
She still lives in Budapest, yes. She she just graduated actually not so long ago from high school. She did like a few extended years, and
Nice.
she is a dancer. So she loves hip hop. So it's like just so extremely talented. I cannot wait to have her out here and just have her experience the type of music people dance to and the type of culture.
Oh,
So that's our next step. They're coming out this summer. And
totally.
Yeah, I was
just
gonna
tell me
say place for her. LA,
100%.
San Francisco, the Bay Area. Yeah, just
I love it.
yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So your sister, I'd love now that you've really taken us on a tour through your life, the trials and tribulations, like, you know, the great parts and the part of you. Do you feel like throughout all of this you've established routines that you could share with some of our listeners or mantras perhaps that really helped, you know, you keep going and pursuing something that you love so passionately, even in the face of adversity, of, big life change, of, your parents not understanding? Like, how do you fuel your desire to keep going when it gets really hard?
I always say just to take it one breath at a time, not even one step at a time, because how you feel at the moment can be completely different 20 minutes from now. And because I'm Aries, very like hard headed and very emotional, and I tend to feel like the world is ending about once a day. And that it actually I will feel like that for 20 minutes and I'll take my break. And after 20 minutes, it's all gone.
Mhm.
It's just like almost like a system reboot. And I learned reboot and I learned how my brain works and how I can regulate my emotions by just allowing myself to breathe and give myself space. So even with my boyfriend,
Yeah.
we've been together for 8
I'm gonna
years.
go
I'm
for a
just like
walk.
20 minutes and I'll be back because if I stay here, we're gonna have a really nasty fight and no one needs to do that. Um, Another thing I learned because of all the disappointments I've had in my life, because of the people that I've had in my family or relationships, etc., is that it's actually not your job to fix people. And the sooner you learn that, the further you get in life, but it is also your job to work on yourself and work on your trauma and go do therapy and try and break that, generational pattern that's happening to you and just don't carry it forward. So
Yeah,
that's been my life's work, I feel like.
that's significant. I think your authenticity and your ability to go inwards actually really comes through in your photos. I mean, not only do you capture the essence of the people you're photographing, but even the landscapes. Like there's this photo in your portfolio of Joshua Tree, which is beautiful and rugged, but it's also incredibly hard to capture that type of beauty. I mean, for me, a non photographer, but you do it in a way that's so beautiful that it actually evokes all of these things. Like you captured the road and wow, this is into a space of peace and being a part of this journey and taking things in stride. It's like very cool. Again, if you haven't seen Bettina's work, you have to Google it, go to her website, check it out. It's very beautiful.
Right.
Thank you so much. Do you want to be my manager? Because that was
100%.
really nice.
Well, I
We're
loved,
great
like, you were
hype
talking
women.
about, the woman who hired
Yeah.
you, at that collective, and, like, you can just see how powerful it is to have a person, like, look you in the eye and be like, "You've got something, and you're gonna make it," and just having it can regardless of that, whether that's it continues for a long time, but just having someone give and acknowledging where you're going and being like, but this is the work you have to do, keep going, and I think that that's such a big part of our whole community is that whether we're interacting, with our grown professional women and stories or just listen for a girl and being like, it's okay. Like, you got this. You have so much to work with, I think that that's so powerful. And I love that. I also, one thing I've really seen and with you through working with you, was your level of professionalism too. Obviously, you have had a lot of creative success that you're yourselves, but I think that a lot of creatives struggle with, running themselves as a business and presenting themselves to the world, pitching themselves to clients, following up, and really just creating um, their business end of things. Can you tell us a little bit about how those skills started and how they developed and anything that you do to really like switch back and like entrepreneurial mind?
Totally. Um, I think I owe a lot of my success to my mentors. I always say this, and I really try and focus in now 10 years into this career on giving back. So when I hire women, or I hire people that I know that need that look in the eye and be like, you've got this. And so I've launched a lot of mentorship sessions and et cetera, just to help my community as well. Um, and that's exactly like that
Mm.
entrepreneurial thing is that thread is coming from my mom 100%. I've watched her hustle, and I learned through the mentors of my life, which happen to be all women, is that you need to be 100 times more professional in order to be taken seriously in this life, because you're not going to get paid in time. You're not like, people are going to push you a little bit more than they would
Yeah.
push a man. I'm sorry to say that, but it's still true. And so you have to take yourself seriously first, so then everybody else will. So a lot of the times it just happens to be, making sure your contracts are signed, making sure your invoices are sent out in time, that you have to meet in time, that you deliver on your promises. If you say the photos will be in your inbox by May 3rd, they are there. And I learned to never break my word. So because at the end of the day, that's all I
Love
have
that.
is just my
Well,
word.
and that it's like it
Mhm.
takes convincing yourself
Hmm.
first, that it's like it's not all about being like everyone's got to take me seriously. It's like before you could even approach that and communicate to the world what you demand as a professional and
Hmm.
how you do business, you have to first really believe it yourself and be like, I deserve this. This is the work I'm doing. And, I'm not self before trying to convince anyone else.
Exactly. Exactly. All you have is your rep at the end of the day, right? So you have to just
Love it.
take that thing
Oh, so
seriously.
good. Well, I mean, we got up to the point of your first big commercial jobs. Any like more recent big learnings or breakthroughs or shifts that you've experienced since that time that you'd like to share?
Um, I think since that time, so I through to continue the immigration journey, I ended up swearing Canadian in 2019. I became a citizen, now holding two passports, European and Canadian. And of course, at the same year, taking the next step, um, I ended up getting an O1 visa to the United States, which is only for extraordinary talent, which
Yeah.
I think it sounds very
Takes a lot
fancy.
to
It kind of
maintain
is.
also.
Actually, it's very hard to, and it takes a lot to maintain, and hard to extend. So I'm on my second O1 now, and I got represented here in Los Angeles. So we moved out in 2019. The moment I got my Canadian passport, I just left. I'm just like this crazy, crazy person that needs to keep going to put herself into more and more challenges. I don't know where the drive is coming from, but I'm sure I'll find out in therapy later on. So yeah, we moved here, and I expected, because at that time I was already like one of the top photographers in Toronto, and I had the biggest clients you can get in Canada. And when I moved here, I realized that I was actually a big fish, or a top photographer. But looking back, I realized, wow, I was really a big fish in a small pond. And I'm here in LA, and I'm in the ocean, and there's sharks, and it doesn't matter if I'm a big fish. Everybody else is extremely talented and they were born here and they know people here and they don't have an accent. And like, so I started listing everything that I don't have compared to them. And I started minimizing myself and my talent. And I ended up going down this like not nice path throughout the pandemic. And it's only been, I think, 6-7 months how I can pull myself out of it, what tools I need to apply to not feel like I'm not enough, and what kind of and hope I have to insert into my own life to be able to continue on this path. Because I made this decision and I'm not again backs down. So I'm just going to continue, and it's been way better now. I don't recommend moving
I
6
could have
months before a
reworked
world
that.
pandemic to a new country.
No,
Anyway.
thank you for sharing that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that it is so powerful to
Yeah.
have those moments where it's like, oh, the deep dark night, and then, hey, well, what is working for me? So you mentioned optimism, confidence, that have helped you pull out of that place. Can you share anything specifically, whether it's a routine that you have or something that you like, how you kind of switch when you're finding yourself thinking more negatively?
So
Mm.
first of all, I found a really great therapist. I went through 3 different people until I landed her, which I highly
Mhm.
recommend. She has tools like EMDR that really worked for me. Um, and my physical health, I didn't realize how much it impacts my mental health, and just putting myself
Mhm.
onto the daily routine of working out at least for an hour a day. And whether that's like an hour-long walk
Mhm.
or an hour worth of powerlifting weights, I made it possible so I can just go in my garage and do it and get it over with. And the the shift in mood and the hopefulness and the optimism is so much easier to instill. Extra regime, I feel like I feel invincible on days like that when I had a really hard workout and I never thought I would be able to push through, and I do. And I think that kind of discipline just helps you create a bigger picture of like, oh no, if I can do this like one workout at a time, I can do this at one email at a time, and I can continue building this work empire that I have. But I also just stopped putting so much pressure on me when it comes to finding um, joy and success. I no longer look at financial success as something that like is the must. Yes, it's obviously great to have, and like I wouldn't be able to operate a business without paychecks. But I also just started focusing a little bit more on art and finding the everyday joy in creating pictures that I want, like those kind of creatives. When I started out with my girlfriend on the Vespa, that's the stuff that I'm looking for now. And since I've been creating art, working out every day, going to therapy, everything else just aligned.
Right,
So
like taking it
it's
back
like a
to kind of the
threefold
building blocks. It's
situation.
like, how am I physically feeling? Like, how is my heart feeling? Like, what are some things I need to, address? Like, what's pulling me down that I don't even acknowledge right now? Dealing with those building blocks. And then it's like, okay, wow, like and now I have a different
Exactly.
perspective on everything that I'm doing and I can take it one moment at a time.
I literally decided to take body
Right.
and soul, but I didn't know what they were missing. So I had to individually, everything else seemed like it was not connected. And now everything just puzzled together and it's perfect.
I love that. It's actually something you hear a lot, but I think that you did a really great job of outlining how exactly you did that. Like your mind with therapy, your body with exercise, your soul with leaning into the art aspect of your work more than, focusing on how to be successful.
Exactly.
Ah, well, this is bringing me so much joy. Much, not
Yes.
so much. I love talking to a creative, and I know she does too, and could keep you forever, and we really can't. But we're so honored to have you on the show, and that you came on a busy Monday. So we begrudgingly are going to move into something we call our Fast Five, which is just kind of a fun, simple, light way to kind of shake off all of like the deep, you know, the depths that we went into during our interview, and just kind of laugh and ask quick questions for quick answers. So if you're ready, Asha, you can take it
Sure.
away with
Yeah, what's
number
like
one.
a difficult part of being a photographer that people don't always like think about? Like a difficult thing or an annoying thing? I know, I was like, "Wait, that wasn't really light."
Everything's very heavy, guys.
Oh, actually physically heavy. I thought you were
All
saying the
my
question was
equipment
heavy.
is so heavy and physically.
I was
No,
like, "It's okay."
that was so great. No,
Asha, I wish
I was I
everyone
was
could
like,
have seen
"Oh,
your face of
oops."
that
concern.
was
You were
so
like,
funny.
No, that's such a good point, though. There's so much equipment.
okay,
So much
I know.
equipment.
That's where the
So much.
weightlifting
Yeah,
comes
Great
in.
answer.
exactly.
To
You
the
got it.
physical training.
You got it.
Okay. Where is your favorite shoot in the world?
Oh my goodness. I think nothing beats the light in LA though. There's this like gorgeous fog you get and that haze
Yeah.
and just like it filters the sunlight.
Right?
Beautiful.
It's a
The
natural
afternoon
filter.
Mhm, exactly.
Might be clogging our pores,
CO2.
but
Yeah.
makes them look right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
No. But your
Yes.
pictures like make LA look
So good.
as it should all the
What is the number
time.
one mistake that you notice novice photographers making?
They really worry about focus instead of composing the picture. They really worry about making the manual settings great, where all you need to do is just capture a moment, and that makes them
Yeah, that you
forget
see the photo as a whole
that
and not just
they
like,
just need to
okay, is
capture
that
the moment.
one piece of hair or whatever in focus? Right.
Yeah. Or like, is this sharp enough? Or is it like, is my
Mm.
focus on the eye
Yeah. Get
instead
the
of
moment.
the ear?
Love
Who
it.
cares? Just take the picture, capture the moment. Yeah, exactly.
This is good for me because I'm not good at taking pictures. I'm internalizing all of this.
You're thinking too much. You're thinking too much. Yes.
Okay. Who or what has been influenced?
Ooh. I always say my first big book once, and she's a absolutely talented photographer, fine art photographer. She shoots a lot, and just she's a perfect person to capture the moment when you have a roll of on your film, and just she gets every shot. I adore
Love
her
it.
for that. Yeah, I aspire to be her
So
one
we
day.
love, especially with our creatives, we love learning kind of how they fill their tank up creatively. Like a designer, Rachel Pally, who we had on the show, she loves throwing clay pottery, and she explained how that was like a recent thing that was really kind of getting her remotivated and ready to do creative work again. What do you have like a favorite book, movie, museum, or any kind of creative well recently that you're just kind of going to get recharged?
Actually, what I do the opposite of artsy, and I just go with friends or go to a concert or like do anything that's nothing to do with looking at work because I immediately will think of it. So that's basically it. Just like let loose with friends or go to the desert for one night and just look at the nothingness and just be one with it. That really helps me just kind of clear my mind and not think of it.
So good.
I love it.
We also like to
Yes.
when we remember to do it, we like to close our interviews with a final question. But if you had, what was one quality that you had as a young woman that you maybe didn't take pride in back then that you look back now and you really appreciate and love about yourself?
I looked at the old photos that I had yesterday and I realized that I had a lot of friends and I had a lot of love for my friends. And I didn't actually, I always thought I was just like this bullied child. And now I'm looking through these pictures and I realized how much love I had for everyone. And I always thought I was an introvert, but it's like an introverted extrovert type of. I love that about my young self, and I carried that thread through my whole life. And I have like 12 best friends, like not one. There's like has to be 12. Otherwise, like everybody needs to be mentioned. So I think that's what I love. It's that I'm very
Beautiful.
social
And I see that in you
loving.
for sure. Well, I have so enjoyed this interview, and I'm so glad that we were able to coordinate with you, have you on, and share your story, move a lot of people, and we're just so grateful for you taking the time to do this with us today. So thank you, Bettina. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This
Yeah.
is so special.
It was a joy.
Yes.
This was like such a moment of peace and just reflection and
I know, kind of
and
for all of us,
otherwise
to be honest.
crazy
And we all logged on, we're like,
And we-
"Oh, hi."
Hi.
And this was really lovely. So thank you, and we'll talk again
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for having me.
Real quick, where can people find you? Where can they find your work?
Definitely my website. I just actually updated it today. It's bettinabogar.com or Instagram at Bettina Bogar. And I started my production company called Bogar Inc. So at
Oh.
bogar.inc, you can also find me there. Just starting out. It's brand new. So give it some love. Because it needs
Exciting.
it.
We will link everything in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You guys know where to find us. You've got to check out Bettina's work. This was incredible. All right. See you next week.
And that's our show. If you liked what you heard today, please like, subscribe to, follow, and share Meet Bridget with your circle. The best way to help our work here is to rate and review our podcast. We're listening and constantly working to build something helpful for you. Catch you next time.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?